Now this is good, but then you might ask, well, if the balance factor is valid, how can we be sure that such a tree, an AVL tree, will have a height of order log n? So that needs an argument. So the claim is that uh, the height of the AVL tree is order log n, and that requires a justification. How do we know? How can we be sure that this claim is true for any AVL tree? So what does it mean for the height to be order log n? What it means is we want to show that the height of the tree is bounded from above by some constant multiple of log n. Right? That's what it means for the height for h to be order log n. Right? Another way to say this is that log n should be greater than or equal to h by c. By the way, if the math confuses you, just assume c is 1. So if h is less than or equal to log n, that means log n is greater than or equal to h. Now if we raise both the left and right sides to the power of 2, 2 to the power log n is greater than or equal to 2 to the power h by c. Right? Since our logarithms are all base 2 in discrete math, this is n. N is greater than or equal to, we can say, the cth root of 2 raised to the power h. So that means the number of nodes in the tree has to be exponential in the height of the tree. Right? These are equivalent statements. The height of the tree is order log n is equivalent to saying that the number of nodes in the tree has to be exponentially growing with the height. 2 to the power 1 by c is just the cth root of 2. So if c is 2, for example, we are talking about the square root of 2. If c is 3, we are talking about the cube root of 3. Cube root of 2, and so on. So this number will be more than 1, and so this number raised to the power h is guaranteed to grow exponentially with h. So to prove that the height of the tree is order log n, we will actually try to prove that the number of nodes in the tree is at least some exponential function of h, and that will that will effectively prove that the height is order log n. Any questions about the strategy we're going to be using to justify this? Yeah, Jojan?
Can you see it in the equation you wrote there? Can you see what is c here? Height less than c log n. What is c?
So when we use the big O notation, so when we say, for example, the running time is order n square, what does that mean? It means that the uh, the graph of t of n, if you were to plot it for different values of n, let's say we are talking about the worst case here. So the worst case running time, if you were to plot it, is going to be bounded from above by some constant multiple of n square. That's what it means for the running time to be order n square. So
Oh,
you
okay.
plot running time versus n.
It
So
is the
suppose
distance from the origin, right?
uh, this is a discrete function, even though I'm showing it in a continuous way, and for different values of n, integer values of n, there will be some values for the running time. Worst case, we're talking about the worst case among these, because there'll be lots of different inputs of size 5, for example. If n is the size of an array you're given, uh, there are lots of different arrays of size 5 you can be given in all kinds of
Okay,
ordering.
that's a
Some can be
constant
sorted,
time,
some can
right?
be
That's a
reverse sorted, but we
C
are
is a
focused on
constant.
the worst case. The claim is that this, if t of n is order n square, that means in the worst case there will be uh, some quadratic function of the type cn square which will always be above t of n, or you can say t of n will always be below this function c, some constant multiple of n square, uh, for n that is large enough, right? For large enough n, that's why we call it asymptotic analysis, because we are talking about large values of n. Uh, that means there will come a point where t of n will be bounded from above by constant multiple of n square. This is technically the definition of the Pico notation, right? So we don't care what the constant is, whether it's n square or 2n square or 3n square, doesn't matter. Um, as long as it's some constant multiple of n square, we can say that the growth of t of n is at most quadratic. So in English, if we want to say this, we would say the rate of growth of t of n, or the running time, is at most quadratic. Right? It's not. That means it's not. It's better than cubic, better than quartic, better than exponential time, but worse than linear time, worse than n log n. And for small values of n, note that uh, this property need not hold for small values of n. Just like insertion sort can be quite fast for small values of n, even though it's n square, it can run faster than merge sort. But because merge sort is n log n, insertion sort is n square, there will, for large enough n, merge sort is going to uh, do better than insertion sort, because merge sort is going to be bounded from above by a constant multiple of n log n, not n square. So it doesn't matter what n square function you take, it will eventually become more expensive than n log n, or whatever the merge sort complexity is.
Close this door.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So the next question is, how do we prove that this intuitive property of height balance guarantees that the height of the tree is log n, or that the number of nodes in the tree is exponential in the height? The two are equivalent. So let's consider a tree of height h. Let's say this is the root, um, this is the left subtree, this is the right subtree, and let's assume that the height of this AVL tree is h. So the number of nodes, so I'm going to say that I'm going to let n of h be the minimum number of nodes. So we want to argue that the number of nodes in this tree is some exponential function of h. So I'm going to argue that even the smallest possible tree that you can construct of height h is going to have an exponential number of nodes in h. So if I define n of h as the smallest number of nodes, or the minimum number of nodes possible in an AVL tree of height h, And if I can show that this value is going to grow exponentially with h, that means any other AVL tree of height h is also going to grow exponentially with h, because it might even have more nodes than this smallest number. So we want to focus our attention here on the smallest possible AVL tree of height h that there can be. So if we want this tree to be the smallest possible, the balance factor at the root can't be 0, because if the balance factor is 0, that means we have both trees on the left and right having the same height. But we are trying to look at the smallest tree of this height h. So why not make one of the subtrees be of height h minus 1? Sorry, if this has a height of h, then we should one of the subtrees is definitely going to have a height of h minus 1, right, for the whole tree to have a height of h. But instead of making the other subtree also be of height h minus 1, we should make it height h minus 2, because that's what the smallest AVL tree of height h would have. And again, we are assuming that this left subtree is the smallest possible AVL tree of height h minus 1, because if it wasn't, then we could replace it by the smallest possible tree of height h minus 1, and we would get an even smaller tree of height h, which is not possible. So we are already looking at the smallest AVL tree of height h. Likewise, the right subtree must be the smallest AVL tree of height h minus 2. I picked left and right arbitrarily here. I could have picked the right subtree as a height h minus 1 and the left subtree with height h minus 2. So in other words, we can write this equation that n of h must be equal to the number of nodes in the left subtree plus the number of nodes in the right subtree plus the extra root node. We want to show this grows exponentially with h. And we have just written a recurrence equation for it. If you want to think about this in terms of the lazy manager's analogy, it's like, you are a lazy manager, you've been asked to compute the minimum number of nodes in an AVL tree of height h. You say, well, I don't want to do this job. I'm just going to focus on the root node. It should have it should have two subtrees. So if it had only one subtree, then I would not be an AVL tree. The tree would not be an AVL tree because the balance factor would be out of bounds. So one of the subtrees, so I'll call a subordinate and I'll say, let's say your subtree is of height h minus 1. If the whole tree is of height h, your subtree must be of height h minus 1. You figure out the smallest number of nodes that are possible in your subtree. And I call my right subordinate, second subordinate, and I tell that person, you figure out how many nodes are possible, minimum number of nodes that are possible in a subtree of height h minus 2. Why did I pick h minus 2 and not h minus 1 for that person? Because I want to minimize the total number of nodes in the tree of height h. So uh, having both subtrees be of height h minus 1 will be too excessive, when I can get by with one of the subtrees being slightly smaller than the other. And once both of those subordinates come back with their respective answers, I just add my root node to their answer, and that's my answer. Shubham?
Hi. So why do you say the Because yes, writing that the left subtree will have h minus one elements and right will have h minus two.
The height,
I'm good.
sorry, height will be
Height,
h minus
height,
1. Yeah.
right? I'm good with that. But you say that the n of h is minimum number of nodes is possible in ABL tree. So why do you say that the minimum number of nodes in the left subtree will be an n of h minus one? Because you might be having minimum number of node which is lesser than that. Um, but it would actually we have to make the entire tree to be AVL. You might have to make it h minus one. If
No,
you get what I'm
so
trying to say.
we are given that the entire tree is already AVL. So this value must be n of h minus 1, because if it wasn't, then by making it n of h minus 1, I would reduce the value of n of h, which is a contradiction. It's similar to how we argue for optimal substructure, that any subproblem
Yeah.
that is
Okay.
that the overall problem
Yeah.
is composed of must itself have an optim have be optimal when you look at the overall optimal structure of the whole problem. Any
Yeah.
subproblem that you see inside it must have an optimal substructure either, also. In a similar way, this left subtree, or it could be the right subtree, one of the two subtrees must have a height of h minus 1, and the number of nodes in that subtree must already be the smallest number possible with that height.
Can there not be any other smaller number which is possible than h minus one in suppose in the left subtree?
No, because the AVL tree property is for every node, right? It's not just for the root.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
every node should have, for every node, the balance factor should be minus 1, 0, or plus 1. So if I have fewer than n of h minus 1 nodes, that means it's not an AVL tree, because
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
subtree won't be AVL then.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
So yeah, Abhishek.
Hey Omkar, so why do you say that the root node, the balance factor for the root node cannot be zero? Like, why do you assume that?
Uh, because I can prune away, if it was 0,
Uh-huh.
then that means both subtrees have a height h,
Right,
and obviously the bigger the height of a subtree, the more the number of nodes in it, right?
right,
So in order to make the fewest number of nodes
right. Okay,
exist in my subtree, if I can get by
right.
by pruning away a little bit of one of those two subtrees to make the height h minus 1, oh
Sure.
sorry, h minus 2, then I'm achieving the fewest number of nodes in the overall subtree.
Correct. Got it. Got it. Thank you so much.
Shubham, could you lower your hand if your question's answered? Thanks. Are you full?
Yeah, I'm still trying to understand why h minus 2 for the right subtree, because they could have both same height and give you 0 for the root node, which would satisfy the AVL tree condition, right, or
No,
requirement.
if they had, so suppose this node, this subtree, right subtree had a height of h minus 2, sorry, h minus 1, right? I could take all the leaf nodes in that subtree and remove them. What would be the height of the resulting subtree? It would be h minus 2, right? And it would still be an AVL tree. Everything would be balanced in it. And the overall tree would also be an AVL tree, because all that happened is the balance factor here changed from 0 to plus 1. So if you give me any right subtree that has a height of h minus 1, I can prune it down to a subtree of height h minus 2 and not violate the AVL tree property anywhere, showing that both subtrees having a height of h minus 1 is not going to give me the optimal number.
Okay. I guess you are doing that for your analysis, but it could be the case for AVL tree to have h-1 on both sides of the tree.
Yeah. That's possible. So we want to show that any AVL tree is going to have a certain number of nodes that is exponentially growing with h. So how do we show that for any AVL tree? Well, you take the most watered down AVL tree or the smallest AVL tree and show that even for that the number of nodes is growing exponentially with h. So if you have a fatter AVL tree, that's obviously going to be true for that as well.
Got it. Thank you.
Govardhan?
I had the same doubt as the previous guy asked. I'm a little bit clear about n of h-1, where h stands as the height. But about the h-2, I was a little bit trying to figure out how that subtree will be in an AVL, having all the properties of AVL.
So we are assuming, so this is just like we do in recursion. We are assuming that this subtree has a height of, it's the smallest subtree that's possible with height h-2. When we delegate the task to a right subordinate, it is, it's kind of given to us that they're going to come back with an AVL tree. Now, which AVL tree do we want from them? We want an AVL tree of height h-2 with the fewest number of nodes that are possible.
So if you you are considering n of h-1 or n of h-2, taking the root node, am I right? Considering the root node for that, the height of the left subtree is h-1 and the height of the right subtree is h-2. Is that's
so n of h-1 is simply the number of nodes in this subtree.
Yeah. And which one is h-2? The right one.
Yeah, this is n of h-2.
So
number of nodes in this subtree, including this.
If you don't even add that one, so the difference. Oh, okay. Now the difference between the left subtree and the right subtree is only 1.
The height difference is 1. We don't know what the number of nodes.
Yeah, we don't care. It's only the
right. In fact, we are trying to derive an expression for it.
Okay. Now I'm
but
clear.
we don't know what that expression is.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yiling?
Oh, hi, Anka. Could you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is all good, like why we use h-1, h-2. I just have a question on the explanation previously. You said given any h, if the right subtree is h-1, I think you said we could prune it and make it h-2.
So it's like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that part I don't understand. Why we prune it?
Oh, so somebody was saying why can't this be h-1? So I was trying to argue, similar to how we argue in greedy in proofs for greedy algorithms, that you give me anything else other than what my greedy algorithm came up with, I can make it better, showing that what you came up with was not the best to start with. So in a similar way, if somebody comes and says, I have the smallest possible AVL tree ready for you of height h, and I notice that both of these have a height of h-1. What I can do is I can take one of those two subtrees, let's say I take the right subtree, and I prune it down by removing all the leaf nodes to make it height h-2. By doing that, I would be preserving the AVL tree property everywhere, and I would have an AVL tree that is smaller in the number of nodes, in terms of the number of nodes, showing that the tree that originally was given to me was not the smallest AVL tree with that height. The height of the overall tree did not change by reducing the height of this from h-1 to h-2. the balance factors everywhere are still valid, and I was able to improve the solution, showing that that solution was suboptimal to start with.
Oh, then where do we put all the nodes that was pruned off the right subtree? To the left?
No, I just deleted them. I did it to show that person that what that person gave me was not the smallest AVL tree of height h.
Oh, right, got it. Thank you.
Right, it's the smallest AVL tree of height h must have one subtree being of height h minus 1, the other being of height h minus 2, not h minus 1.
Right, got it.
So, since this is not a math class, we're not going to exactly solve this. We just want to show that n of h grows exponentially with h. Now, this kind of recurrence it looks a little familiar. It is almost the same as the Fibonacci recurrence. Right? If this was fib of h on the left side and fib of h minus 1 and fib of h minus 2 on the right side, then it would then the number of nodes that we are talking about would be a Fibonacci number itself, exactly the Fibonacci number. But there's this plus 1 there. But we can actually make a small tweak to to transform this recurrence into a Fibonacci recurrence. So let's say I add plus 1 here and I add plus 1 here, and I have this plus 1 there. So I have n of h plus 1 is n of h minus 1 plus 1 and n of h minus 2 plus 1. So if I were to define this as some f of h, this would be f of h minus 1, this would be f of h minus 2. And I know that f of h here is the Fibonacci, the hth Fibonacci number. Well, actually it depends on the base case, but at least the sequence is going to be Fibonacci in nature. We don't know what the base case is. Let's actually find out. F of 0 would be n of 0 plus 1. N of 0 is the minimum number of nodes possible in an AVL tree of height 0, which is basically 0. We need two base cases for the Fibonacci recurrence because it uses it looks back 2 steps. Right? The value of f of h depends on the previous 2 steps, so we need 2 of the values to be filled in. F of 1 would be n of 1 plus 1. How many nodes are possible in a what's the minimum number of nodes in an AVL tree of height 1? Well, it's just 1 because it's just an isolated node. So 1 plus 1 would be 2. So f of 0 is 1, f of 1 is 2, f of 2 will be 1 plus 2, which is 3. And so the f values, f of 0 was 1, f of 1 is 2. So the values we are getting are 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and so on. These are all the f values, f of h values. The Fibonacci sequence is basically this sequence. So basically ignoring the first 2 values, everything else is common. So the value of f that we are talking about is basically the Fibonacci sequence with the first 2 values eliminated. So f of h in general is you can say h plus 2th Fibonacci number. right? F of 0 is the, so this is the 0th Fibonacci number, this is the first Fibonacci number, this is the second Fibonacci number, and so on. So again, the exact expression doesn't matter. All that matters is that f of h is somewhere around the hth Fibonacci number, right? Whether it's h plus 1, h plus 2, that's not the main point. Our f sequence is growing exactly like the Fibonacci sequence. And since n of h is just 1 less than f of h, n of h is just 1 less than f of h. If this grows like Fibonacci, like the Fibonacci numbers, n of h will also grow like the Fibonacci sequence. And the question is, how do the Fibonacci numbers grow? And that's something I covered in the foundations for week 2. If you remember, when we were trying to find f of h there, or I should say fib of h, it depended on fib of h minus 1. So it was fib of h minus 1 plus fib of h minus 2. Fib of h minus 1 in turn depended on fib of h minus 2 and fib of h minus 3. This depended on fib of h minus 3 and fib of h minus 4. So this is a tree. It's not exactly shaped like a triangle, because there are some paths in this tree that are longer. Like this path has the argument of the fib function reducing by 1. So this path length will be h. It will go down all the way to fib of 0. So this path has a length h. It's actually the longest path in this tree. Along the longest path, the arguments will reduce by 1 each time. This path is going to be the shortest path. Shortest path to any leaf. Because here the argument of the fib function reduces by 2 in each step. So the length here is going to be h by 2. So the overall shape of this tree is going to be something like that. It's not a perfect triangle, but along some paths the lengths are shorter, and these intermediate paths will have intermediate lengths because sometimes the values reduce by 1, sometimes they reduce by 2. But the point is that at least up to this level, if I were to look at this section of the tree that I am coloring crudely red, it's completely filled. It's completely filled up to level h by 2. And then there are more nodes in it. And finally, all the leaf nodes are either zeros or ones. There are only zeros and ones at each leaf node. So that means the value of fib of h is built up by cumulatively adding a bunch of zeros and ones at the leaf node. Now the number of leaf nodes is going to be at least you can say 2 to the power h by 2. 2 to the power h by 2 nodes at this level. Right? And of course, some paths continue down, they'll have more, they'll expand even more. But whatever the number of zeros and ones at the bottommost level, has to be at least h by 2 to the power h by 2. I gave this argument in the foundation videos there, but just recapitulating, the number of leaf nodes is going to be at least 2 to the power h by 2. And because each leaf node is either a 0 or 1, the value of fib of h is going to be greater than or equal to the total number of leaf nodes in the tree, which is greater than 2 to the power h by 2, which can also be written as square root of 2 to the power h, which is basically 1.4 to the power h. So the value of fib of h has to be at least equal to square root of 2 to the power h. That is exponential in h. So the Fibonacci sequence grows exponentially, which is why the recursive solution has a combinatorially exploding time complexity, the naive recursive solution. That's why we need dynamic programming. Right. But anyway, even if we use dynamic programming, the fact is that the value, even if we can compute this value quickly, the point is that the value of this function is growing exponentially with h. That means n of h grows exponentially with h. This is what we wanted to prove. So the value, the actual number of nodes in any AVL tree, of size h, of height h, will obviously be greater than or equal to n of h. So that means this also grows exponentially with h. And that means we can go back and claim that we have proven this, or equivalently we have proven that h is order log n. It actually turns out that the math is again not relevant here, but there is a closed form solution for the Fibonacci, the hth Fibonacci number. It actually grows. So fib of h grows at the rate of 1.618 to the power h. 1.618 is basically square root of 5 plus 1 by 2. It's also known as the golden ratio, but it's more than 1.4 or square root of 2 to the power h as predicted. But if n of h is growing at the rate of, or if we say n of h is some constant times 1.618 to the power h, then you can actually take log of both sides, right? Log of c plus h log of 1.618, and you can actually go through these steps to show that the rate of growth of h is just going to be log of n divided by log of 1.618, which is roughly 1.44 log n. If you just plug in the value for log of 1.618 and take the reciprocal of that, it'll come out to be roughly 1.44 log n. That means the height of the tree is not exactly log n, but it's It's growing at the rate of 1.44 log n. So it's more flexible compared to a complete binary tree whose height would actually be exactly log n or log n plus 1, something like that. This 1.44 is a bigger constant. So that means by having more flexibility in an AVL tree, you're allowing the tree to have a height whose absolute value is a little bigger, but then the adjustments with insertions and deletions, as you'll see, will be feasible in log n time instead of uh, taking order n time as we were constrained to do with a complete binary tree structure. But even ignoring this, just it's qualitatively sufficient to uh, just uh, understand that the number of nodes is going to be exponential in H. It doesn't matter what that constant is. Any questions on this? That the height of any AVL tree is thus guaranteed to be so I'll write this in red. Height of any AVL tree with n nodes is guaranteed to be order log n.
Could you quickly recap what motivated us to look for AVL rather than the strict ES?
Review what, sorry?
Like, what motivated us to look for AVL tree rather than the complete binary search tree?
Because we saw that when we go with a complete binary tree structure, readjusting the tree to preserve the search property takes too much time because you might have to move everything around.
Thank you.
So that didn't work. Now we haven't yet seen how we will move things around in an AVL tree, but it wasn't clear from this property description that an AVL tree will have height that is guaranteed to be order log n. But we have proved that here. In fact, somebody could have asked that question even for the problem you do in the trees class, where you're given a sorted array, you want to build a balanced binary search tree out of it. The claim is that the height of that tree is going to be log n. Right, you pick the middle node, you make it the root, and you recurse on the left side and the right side in trying to construct that tree. But what is the guarantee that the height of that tree will be log n? That guarantee comes from the proof that we did, which I didn't really do there because we weren't discussing AVL trees formally there. Shobit?
Yeah, hi Omkar. So just wanted to confirm that whatever discussion we are doing, it is for binary search tree and not a general binary tree, or is it kind of common to both?
This is so you can think of an AVL tree structure even if the tree was not a search tree.
Okay.
Right? I mean, you can think of any tree that has a property that the difference in the two heights for any node is less than or equal to 1, the absolute difference in the heights. So that property does not, it's independent of the search property.
Yeah, but your first claim that it is taking order n to reshape the tree, that is only applicable for search tree, right?
Yeah. Because it's a binary search tree, we have to have the values in a particular order to match the in-order traversal. Yeah, otherwise, while inserting, you can always insert any new node here. Right? Okay. You don't have to insert it there. Just put it, just like we do in the case of heaps, right? When we insert an element in a heap, we conceptually insert it only here. And then we worry about the heap property, saying that and we just have to look at the parent there. The heap property is more relaxed than a binary search tree property, because all you have to care about is making sure your relationship with your parent is good.
Sure.
Right?
Okay.
That is, the value that you have is more than the value that your parent has in a min heap. If not, then you just swap the two values.
Okay.
So
Okay. Thanks.
so there it was easy to maintain the structure, but with a binary search tree property, it's not easy to maintain the structure. To maintain the
Okay.
structure, you have to pretty much rearrange everything,
Mhm.
which means it's too expensive.
But whatever proof we did, this 1 point this log n, that height is dependent on the log exponentially. The number of nodes is dependent on exponential h. That is applicable for non-search tree as well, right? For AVL trees. This proof.
Yeah. As long as you have that AVL tree structure, this this property is true, that the number of nodes in any AVL tree, even if it's not a search tree,
Yeah.
will be exponentially growing with the height, or the height will be order log n.
Sure. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
So we could have gone back to these diagrams we saw earlier and just erase the values. You could still derive the balance factors even if you didn't look at what the values are.
Yeah.
So the values, we look at the values when we are trying to satisfy the search property. We look at the structure when trying to look at the height balance property.
Okay. Thanks.
Jojan?
Yeah, but I kind your proof is not at covering how do we balance it, right? How do we?
No.
Because your initial, it was just a proof that inverse of x, because we arrived at height from n nodes because it is a logarithmic, right? Because if you take logarithm of n, that will be the max height. So
Yeah.
is essentially same as saying that inverse of exponential functions are logarithmic function, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of proving that the height is a logarithmic function of n, we showed that n is an exponential function in the height.
But that is true for any exponential versus logarithm, because if you take 2 to the power 3, it is 8. Then we take logarithm of 8 to the power of 2, it is 3, right? So
yeah, it's true for any exponential or logarithm, but of course, so because they are equivalent, they are inverse functions, as you said, but we still had to prove that n grows exponentially with h. Right? We proved that n grows exponentially with h instead of proving that h grows logarithmically with n, because the two are equivalent. Proving one is equivalent to proving the other, but the proof itself was, did require
mathematically it is same. If h is exponentially growing with y, then if you take the inverse, it is also true, right? The other one is logarithmically reducing by h, right? Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, thank you.
But the proof still has to be given. The proof was easier to give for the exponential relationship rather than the logarithmic relationship. The two are equivalent, but looking at it this way allowed us to derive to come up with the proof more easily.
Okay, thank you.
Harish?
Sorry, I accidentally hit that. Sorry.
Sure. Okay. Shobit, another question?
No, sorry.
Abhishek?
Hey, Omkar, if you go back, go to the next slide, if you could go. Sorry, the previous one. One more.
Hold on, let me actually just, because I was very loose here, let me. Let me just make it proportional everywhere here. N of h. Proportional. Okay. Which one? This one?
Yes, this one. So over here, you have written the number of nodes grows exponentially with h. And then at the end, you're writing height is greater than or equal to the number of nodes, right? So height
No,
h is...
the actual number of nodes in any AVL tree of height h
Oh, I see. Okay.
is greater than or equal to,
Okay.
because this is the smallest possible number of
Sure.
nodes in an AVL tree of height h. So
Okay.
any fatter tree will have more. So that means any regular AVL tree will also grow exponentially with h.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. So let's go forward now, and now that we know the height balance property of an AVL tree guarantees that the tree is balanced, we want to now understand how do we ensure that it stays balanced as insertions and deletions happen.
Want to become a software engineer at Google? You can, like thousands of our students. You just need to learn from those who've already cleared FANG interviews. At Interview Kickstart, our interview prep courses are developed and taught live by 150 plus instructors from Tier 1 companies like Google and Facebook. Our courses are tailored to help you crack software engineering domain interviews, including back-end, full stack, machine learning, embedded systems, data science, and more. To learn more, book your free webinar slot today